Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Menino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hi, everybody. It's Michael Menino, and welcome to Driven, Unscripted Success podcast. Today on the podcast, we're interviewing professionals who share their experience with you, the audience, and how they got to where they're at today. And zooming from the beautiful island of Utah is Ryan Wilcox. How you doing, young man?
Good to see you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Love to share the experience with you. Ryan is a legislator. Also, he has a school security company, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, and not really a company, but we recently formed the National School Safety Policy Center in Washington to drive these issues across the country. But we don't make any money.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. You're doing all this good work. Usually people that do good work make good money. Do me a favor. Tell me about, where you're at today and how you got there.
Yeah, it's been a sort of a circuitous path. And I get asked that question a lot, Michael. How do I, especially because we work with a lot of young people. I serve as a state legislator. I chair law enforcement and criminal justice. So I'm always dealing with both the good and the bad in our society. I see all the terrible things that people don't want to know exist. And I work with lots of good young people who want to make a difference. And the real answer to that is, honestly, Michael, nothing I've ever done professionally has been the thing that I planned.
I like saying these words, and it's so true in my life. You want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Exactly. Yeah, down to and including my own plans. When I was a young intern, I finally decided I wanted to go to law school, had it planned, ready to go, was headed there in the fall. And then, speaking of, you referenced God had other plans. And I got talked into filing for a legislative seat that I had no business running for. I said I was just been an intern. I technically hadn't graduated when I filed yet from college. And the argument was, well, if you win, you do that for a while and you get into a better law school. And if you lose, no big deal. You go to law school in the fall. And
there you go.
We ended up winning. But what I discovered, Michael, was that after I was a lawmaker for a few years, and by the way, that's the best way to do it when you're the youngest one there, because the expectations are really low, right? So you can.
There you go. Like low expectations. I love it.
Wasn't he an intern like last week? I'm like, yeah, I was actually. So it's really easy to grow into that quickly. But that whole experience taught me that by the time, like I said, by the time I was a lawmaker for a few years, I didn't want to be an attorney anymore. I worked with so many attorneys that were miserable being attorneys, that were doing all sorts of things that they didn't want to do with their lives. And what I discovered was what I was really passionate about was policy, was constitutional law and public policy. And how does that become a career even? I didn't know. Right. I was a part-time legislator and I was managing retail stores for a now defunct cell phone company for Sprint Nextel. Right.
Nice.
So nice. Northern Utah sales manager for these guys. And so I'm doing that. And what I'd really discovered that I loved policy. And so I kind of leaned into the pre-law portion of all of that and studied and learned. And I advanced pretty quickly in my career in the legislature. I was the vice chair of rules right away, and then the chair of revenue and taxation, which is terrible, but you get to keep taxes low. So that was fun for me. Until I got recruited to go to Washington, and Senator Mike Lee recruited me in 2014 to join his staff. And so I quit my other things. That was what I was going to do. And I was his national security, energy and natural resource policy guy and his Northern Utah area director. And so I had the coolest job that I couldn't have planned.
Right. Yeah. I know the feeling.
I had all the national security stuff at the test and training range, which everybody knows about Area 51 in Nevada. Nobody knows about Area 52, and there's a reason.
Gotcha.
Area 52 is in the west.
Gotcha.
West Desert, right? But
Did you ever tour those facilities?
I did, yeah. I was there quite a bit where we test out,
Really?
yep, where we test out new things and we reverse engineer, the things that our enemies are attacking our guys with overseas, and we do a lot of really cool stuff.
Is
That
there
the world doesn't know.
there's a lot of people that talk about that area and they're not supposed to. I forgot his name. Larcos or something like that mentions that there's extraterrestrial. I'm sure you didn't get into it, but the smartest people in the world are trying to de-engineer it, and he's talking about 0 point energy and anti-gravity from those machines. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah, well, I can talk about some of it that's been declassified or whatever now, but the first rail guns that before we were testing those on ships, we were testing those at Area 52, right? So the West Desert, for example, and it was calculating everything and how do these work and can a gun really be effective if it's only powered by electricity, and just it's kind of amazing technology. So I had that adventure. I had the public lands portfolio throughout the state of Utah as the Energy and Natural Resource Advisor. So I got to travel all over Utah, and I think you mentioned that you'd been to Salt Lake.
I love Salt Lake. Absolutely love Salt Lake. The beautiful place, beautiful people, beautiful place.
Yeah, and really Utah is two completely different places. You have northern Utah, where I live, like by the ski resorts and all that. And then you have southern Utah, which is Red Rock Wilderness and 5 national parks and totally different world, right? So if you've been to the one, you still need to go to the other.
There you go. There you go. So you're out a little bit out there, right? And so you're still in the politics, right?
I thought I was done. 2018, again, like the plans don't happen the way you think you're going to do it. Yeah. So
right. Yeah, I'm done. Right. I said that many times. God laughs at me. He goes, yeah, right. Let me see how that works out for you.
Exactly. So, in 2018, I got recruited by Intermountain Health. It's a large hospital system here in the West. And what attracted me to them really were the people. You and I were talking about the people here, but the people that work for them, they're a nonprofit hospital system whose charge is to become a model health system and to help people live the healthiest lives possible at the lowest appropriate cost. I knew that it wasn't something where I would make a lot of money necessarily, but a lot like working in the Senate. You don't do that to get rich, right? But super sad.
Well, wait a minute. I know a bunch of senators that are banking on stuff that they set policy for, and it's like, well, wait a minute. How are you making this much money? $250,000 on how does that work?
Now, I'm going to tell you something that probably won't surprise you.
Okay.
The honest ones do not get rich.
No, I know that for a fact. Those are the best. Those are the best people on earth. But they get hammered by the guys that have that do get rich at it. Like Nancy Pelosi, and I'm not gonna. I shouldn't even mention names, but we'll say one girl is worth $40 million and she makes $150,000 a year. How that works is beyond my comprehension.
Yeah. When I worked in the Senate, we were making $85,000 a year, and we knew that was the case, right? It would be an insane amount of work, and all the things. And it was honestly, for me, Michael, I was one of those that tried to join the military after 9/11 that they wouldn't take because I had asthma, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm deaf out of one ear. They wouldn't have accepted me. I tried to fight fighter jets, and they're like, nah, you can't even join the military service, buddy. Get out of my chair.
Well, what the Senate opportunity gave me was an opportunity for me to serve my country. I couldn't do that, but I was really good at the lawmaker thing, and I was really good at the policy that helps people thing. And so when Senator Lee asked me to leave my career, which was I did 13 years into the thing with Sprint at the time, and the legislative career that I'd been there for 6 years by then, and I said, yeah, this is my opportunity to do that. So it very much felt like that for our family. We knew it was going to be a sacrifice financially, but it was an adventure like no other. I mean, at one point I got conscripted into the Secret Service on a presidential site visit. Like just all sorts of amazing kind of crazy things that we experienced and really beautiful things. to serve the people of Utah. But all of that is to say, I ended up at Intermountain Health, a mission-driven organization that allowed me to continue with the policy work and serve people. But I turned down their offer. I've listened to one episode and one of your recent episodes of the podcast, and a real estate investor investing in trailer homes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. By the way, he's sharp.
Thank you.
But
he is a sharp kid, dude. He's young too. This drives me nuts. I'm old. I'm expected to be sharp. This guy's like half my age, and he's killing it.
yeah, that was fun to listen to. But as I go through that, I turned down the first offer Intermountain gave us, and it just freaked my wife out after doing, $85,000 for 5 years with 5 children, by the way. And,
oh my gosh, God love you.
And I said, it's okay. They really want me. Like they'll make another offer, and they did. So I was able to combine that, take care of the family a little bit better. And then during the pandemic, I got roped back into it. I was the county party chair, and my rep at the time, his wife got scammed out of their life savings on one of these giant fraud scams that she thought.
Like, if you don't mind me asking, like which one? What was the fraud scam?
Yeah, I don't know enough detail about it to tell you which one it was, and it was a sensitive thing for them to talk about. So I didn't push them too hard on what exactly she got roped into, but I know that she had invested in some things with people that she thought was a safe bet that wasn't anywhere, ended up being straight fraud. And it was over.
I'm so sorry.
Money left the country. It was overseas, and they weren't able to get that back. Now, we were able to pass legislation in the wake of this, that both national and federal and state, that helped protect people and put some checks in place when this stuff happens. But that gentleman came to me and as the party chair and told me he wasn't going to be able to run, and he had to go back and earn a lot of money again and take care of his family. So we had a couple people lined up that both fell through at the last minute. The last one didn't file the day of filing, and it was because his wife told him she was going to file for divorce if he filed. So I reminded him that that's not worth the $20,000 a year you're going to make from this. So good choice. This is not worth.
Yeah. It's half your money or 20,000. Pick one. Easy question mark to answer.
The big meeting that weekend with everyone was if Wilcox files, then some crazy person won't. And so that's how I got talked into it. It was not the plan. It was not something I wanted to do. But that itself, and again, has led to really what we're talking about today, which has been life-changing. I wouldn't trade these experiences for anything on the planet, like what we've been able to do in the last 5 years.
Do me a favor. Talk a little bit about that, what you've been doing the last 5 years. It was really interesting. We talk off camera for a little bit. Like I don't want to get so deep because there's always great conversation. So let's stop right now and start the recording.
Yeah. So what really happened is when I came back during the COVID riot year, right?
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is 2020. That's when all this is happening. I'm all of a sudden thrown into a race I wasn't planning on. I hadn't fundraised for. Wasn't the
that's right. There you go.
Which also happened to be, all of a sudden a virtual race. Well, during that race, one of our police officers locally, a kid that we had known who was our bagger at the grocery store, was murdered. He was murdered a couple blocks from our home. Yeah, it's a terrible version of the story, but it's real. So Nate was killed. Nate Lyday was killed on a domestic violence call. It was a known felon. So he was there with a probation officer, but the guy shot him through the door as he approached the door to rescue his girlfriend who was being assaulted. So Nate's killed. My friends and I, we hang a giant American flag for Veterans Week every year in honor of one of our friends who was killed in Afghanistan. And we hang it in the canyon. It's the world's largest free-flying American flag that we hang Veterans Week every year. And so we were holding the major is its name. That was his rank. We were holding the major in the outfield at the ballpark. So we had the funeral for Nate at our local minor league baseball stadium, and we're holding our flag. Well, while we were there, we had Salt Lake was going through their riots at the time. Not nearly as bad as Portland, but similar stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And painted the Capitol and burned cop cars and just did all sorts of stuff that was just terrible. And so Salt Lake was asking for help. So half of our Weaver and Ogden police officers went and put their riot gear on, went down to rescue Salt Lake instead of going to the graveside for their fallen officer brother.
Mm-hmm.
While they were down there, one of them got cracked over the head with a baseball bat and ended up in the hospital. That weekend, the mayor of Salt Lake, instead of calling to check on him or any of those things, she put out a hotline to report police abuse.
During that, when one of the officers passed, when he was supposed to be at a funeral, he got hit in the head with a baseball bat, and then the mayor set out an ordinance that requested if anybody gets abused by police officers.
Yeah. The administration in Salt Lake was far more concerned with, police abuse, as they called it, while they were begging agencies around the state to come rescue them, than they were about supporting those officers in any way. And so that really bothered me because I'd been a legislator before and I knew how this stuff worked. I started writing then what would become the riot bill. And, they were cycling them out. They were arresting these people in the riots, and then they were out hours later and they were assaulting our officers again. And nothing was being done about it. And that was quite upsetting. And so I started writing that. Nobody knew who it was that was writing it because I did it through a retiring legislator, had him file the bill and all of that stuff for me because I didn't have any authority yet. Well, I won the race in the fall, and that bill I got through the interim legislative process. And so it's all of a sudden released and all of a sudden shows up with my name on it weeks after the election. So now,
congratulations.
Well, now everybody knows that it's me that's been doing it. And that's how I got roped into the chair of law enforcement. They saw that I was the one that was doing that and asked me if I would take over that committee. Now, I'd never been on that committee. I'd never done it. This was all just, I knew Nate. I knew I'd been a part of that thing. This was just organic that happened in my district, 2 blocks from my home where Nate was, right? So I end up chairing law enforcement, start working on all their things, start meeting with all their people. I put myself through their training back in 2009, just when I was a new legislator. So I went through all the police training protocols and all that. So I had that background. My grandfather was a cop, but I really dove in head over heels with that. Fast forward to I guess 4 years ago now, the next year, and the Uvalde disaster down in Texas happens. And I start getting, at first I just got a few phone calls and emails the day of from parents, had friends in Texas and were worried about, hey, what are our schools like? And the reality is I didn't know, right? My wife's a teacher, my kids are in the schools. And I started asking the same question because, I am responsible for the Department of Public Safety and like really all law enforcement in the state of Utah. Where are we? Are we prepared, or are we going to end up like Uvalde and have a bunch of guys that, sit outside while the disaster happens? Have we not learned the lessons of Columbine still? And I started asking those questions, had a big meeting, that month down at Department of Public Safety with the commissioner and everyone. And the consensus around the table was, we don't know. We don't know where we are. Nobody's ever really done an assessment. And what we know anecdotally is the answer really is just depends on where your kid happens to live. If that principal, if that superintendent, if that particular school board took safety seriously when the recommendations came out 20 plus years ago after Columbine and what we've learned since then.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Then that's it. And, Parkland, and of course, came up and all of those. And nobody here had really done anything to find out. 2019, they had created the school like a coordinator at the state school board position. And so there was somebody that was supposed to try to help people make recommendations, but there wasn't anything really there. And so that became, I thought something I could fix, Michael, in a matter of months. I thought, so that was May, June. I thought by September, I'd have a bill, kind of like I'd done with the riot bill. Okay.
Right.
Now, if you riot in Utah, we arrest you and you don't get out of jail till you see a judge, right? Like they don't have a choice, right? I thought it was going to be something like that. I could fix it, and the governor would sign it, and it would be law, and we'd be taken care of. I found out, working with what I lovingly refer to now as Ed World, that not only was I not going to have this solved, I wasn't going to get it by the next session. I wasn't going to get anything in secondary education, and probably not anything in K-12. So it was a kind of a shock to me to see how much, not that it was open contempt or disdain, but in some cases, yes. This belief that it could never happen here, that will not happen here, and it just couldn't. But the reality is, Michael, there's no reason why not. And it's a complete heads in the sand moment. Florida was not that different. Texas, and I think this was different too. We got so many phone calls and emails after Uvalde, partially because it was another red state, and it was in the West, right? And it was like, hey, looks a lot like the culture in Utah, and I don't think they were prepared, and I don't know that we are either. And so that led to the creation that year of the Utah School Security Task Force. I've chaired that ever since then, and that led to the studies. And part of that, the very next year, we're going through the first year of the task force now. I'm been asked to, by the National School Safety Center to go down to Florida. We have an opportunity. The trials are over down in Parkland for Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and they've invited us, a few of us, down to walk through Building 1200 before they tear it down. And so, of course, I took a red-eye flight down to Fort Lauderdale. I landed at 8 in the morning and was supposed to be at the school, I think, at 10 or 11. And so I slept for an hour, ran over there, met my team there. And what I experienced there in working with those parents, I met Max Schachter there. He's the father of Alex Schachter, 14-year-old who was murdered, was the first one in that first classroom. And he turned out had been the one that had organized and had this idea. And it was because, unlike every other case across the country, they typically raise the building, right? Like where these things have happened. So it happened to Sandy Hook, et cetera. They raise the building, they get rid of them, and then they don't want to remember in some ways. But the prosecutors in Parkland wanted the juries to see it. They didn't want the juries to have a video experience. They wanted them to see what had actually happened. And so they kept the building up for 5-6 years until the trials were over. And then Max had convinced the district to keep it up a little while longer so policymakers could walk through, those of us that were working on this across the country. And I could say my team was scheduled for an hour and a half that day. And by the time I left, I looked at, the little thing on your watch tells you where you've been. I had been in that building for 6 hours.
Nice.
So I have 28 pages of notes. We weren't allowed to video anything, but I've, spending time step by step to understand what went wrong, what went right in some cases, but in Parkland, it was mostly wrong. But to step over, literally, Michael, I don't know how to describe this other than the blood on the floor of the children whose parents you're there with.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you go through the worst day of their life with them, you understand it at a different level that I just couldn't. I understood then why the prosecutors do what they did, because there are things that I saw. I met a woman in DC last week. I say a woman now, but she was a student in that building that day. She was in room 1213. And as I met with her for a brief dinner, I asked her, what do you What did you learn? Tell me about what you experienced that day. And what have you learned more as an adult? She's just graduating law school now, and she's working in Washington, and she's starting off in her life. She said the one thing that still stuck out that's echoed with me, Ryan, is that 2 weeks before it happened, I remember my teacher telling me that they just done their safety training and how dumb it was. Mm-hmm. Right. She was mocking it. She was, how worthless, what a waste of time it was. Nothing. And she said the words, "Nothing like that will ever happen here. You don't have to worry." Mm. And as I'm looking at this, I mean, her classmate was murdered right next to her, right. In that room. And we were having these conversations. So I've had those a lot. I've looked at the Valentines on the floor. It was on Valentine's Day of all days in 2018 when it took place, right? I've seen that stuff on the floor, everything they left. There's like one of the victims' shoes there. And these children who were murdered in that first classroom, I've become friends with their parents. So you have, Alyssa Alhadeff and her mother, Lori. And Ryan Petty and his daughter, Elena. And then, of course, Max and his son, Alex. Those three were all killed in that same classroom. And why? What could we have done differently? There were so many warning signs. I've met with some of the family of Meadow Polak, and this has been interesting too, Michael, because Andrew, Meadow's father, wanted to understand, just like I did, why his daughter died. And so he hired a professional researcher out of DC named Max Eden. And I don't know if you can see this or not. Nope. Maybe
it keeps cutting in and out on it.
Cutting in and out. Anyway, it's a book's called Why Meadow Died. And it documents all of the policy decisions that went into this thing. What did they do with the shooter? What warning signs were there? What decisions were made? And there were so many that were, as a policymaker, and this is the same thing in business, by the way, there are so many predictable things. Like there are certain things will lead to a given outcome. If you buy at a certain point in the market, I just got done listening to the real estate podcast, right? You learn from those along the way. But the problem is when I apply business principles, which is what I do for a living, and the policy side to what has happened in these disasters, the same principles apply. So they're predictable, right? So if you don't look at the market, if you don't study the market in a real estate perspective and understand what the fluctuations are and the major economic factors in a given community and what that's going to do to housing pricing, for example, right? Like then you're going to be just left up to it, and it's kind of luck, but it's never really luck. There are so many factors. Like this boy, this murderer, even calling him a boy feels wrong. There were 47 different interactions with law enforcement that they swept under the rug. They were direct.
What is the number one predictor? I've heard this one. I heard this one stat that kind of blows my mind. And I appreciate having you on the podcast. I am kind of attached to this your subject. I used to teach martial arts in Michigan, and then when the Oxford School, which is right next to Lake Orion where I was teaching, some of my students were from Oxford. When that school shooting happened at the high school, I called a couple of friends up and said, "Where are they at?" And they said they're not in the school, and it was kind of okay. But that happened, and the Michigan State shooting, and the worst part was there were some students from believe it or not, some students from the Oxford High School were enrolled in Michigan State 2 years later when that tragedy happened. And a good friend of mine lost his daughter in the Michigan State one.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's
it really is.
Version of it, right? Like to understand this stuff, I think it's just different when you know the people involved, when you meet with them. Agreed. Lori Alhadeff, so the woman who started Make Our Schools Safe in the wake of this, whose daughter Alyssa's law that I've been working with. I passed it here in Utah. Of course, it's passed in Florida, and we're in like our 9th state across the country working on this now, and spreading that as fast as we can. But her son is at Florida State and was there. Like my new little wristband, Alyssa's law wristband is now the colors of Florida State, right? In honor of her son. Now he wasn't shot there, any of the things, but that family has now gone through that moment twice.
Twice, yeah. So, like I said, from some of my students' kids were in the Oxford and then the Michigan State. It's horrible. It really is. And I'm going to ask you to ask me a question. Now, I'm Sicilian and a professional martial artist.
Wow.
What is the answer? What is the answer to this? Go ahead, ask me what the answer to this is.
Yeah, it's not a simple answer. I mean, there's the real answer. We need like dramatic repentance across the board and a reinvigoration of our institutions of civil society. Right?
I agree with that, but my grandfather told me a long time ago, this is not going to be a popular opinion. Whenever school shooters are found, they should be shot immediately. So it unglorifies their particular part in that, and it'll detour anybody from doing it again. But the one stat that I heard that was kind of crazy is that every one of the school shooters were on depression medication. Yeah, SSR, and side effects are the way they put it on the bottle, may be harmful to other people. And it really, every one of them, is that true? And is that the most insane thing you've ever heard?
Oh, I've heard the same claim. I will tell you there's a lot of different commonalities between. Okay. I can't say categorically that that's true. I know that it's true about a lot of them right. And there are others we've had, and this is terrible as well. And I can only imagine what is going through someone's body.
No.
I remember when I was a teenager, right? I remember how hard that was, and everything's changing, and all the things you're trying to deal with life. And that was hard enough already. I can't imagine what it would be like if I were trying to transition my gender at the same time. That's also unfortunate. Like, we don't talk about it a lot, but there have been several of those cases as well. And so
isn't mental illness part of unpopular opinion?
Yeah,
and you can answer it the way you want as a good politician that you are. I am free from caring what people think of me.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's a mental instability in gender affirming care or gender fluent individuals, young kids, and the suicide rate is up to 40% in that demographic.
The suicide rate is dramatically higher.
So is there just by that stat alone, could you say that there's a mental illness in that particular group? That is an insane. When you come to suicide rate at 4 or 5% compared to 40% of a population of any group, that is insane. It's 1,000 times higher.
So yeah, and this is depending on the data source, all of that. Okay. But what it looks like to me, objectively, from what's been presented to us, both in a legislative context, we've had to address these things legislatively. Utah doesn't allow surgeries for minors. We had that should be a basic. That should be a basic for all states. Period. But I can't believe we're having that conversation in other states. Right. Yeah, I mean, next door, Colorado, California, Washington, Oregon.
Yeah.
California, there's sanctuary states for gender transition. In fact, you lose parental rights if you're not supportive. Teachers are required to report if parents are not supportive of a transition, which is just incredible.
You call it incredible. I call it insane. I can say these things.
Yes. Yeah. Incredible in the, I cannot believe we live in a world where that's allowed, or let alone promoted. But yeah, it's been very disheartening to see. There is no question. I think everybody goes through a difficult transition. I think as a teenager, that's part of the design of life. It's the butterfly thing is hard for the butterfly, right? It's hard for humans too. And you come out a new creature that you're preparing and learning to live with.
Like I was saying, I'm a professional martial artist. I just got back from the U.S. Open, and I break bricks and wood. So I can tell you one thing: if you do something hard long enough, it doesn't get harder; it gets easier, and you get stronger. So going through those hard times, that I've seen a lot of people try not to do hard things, which is insane, absolutely insane. The hardest things you've done in your life are your greatest stories.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So don't take that away. Don't take that away from the kids. Hey, listen, Ryan, I want to thank you enough because we've been rambling on for a minute, and I really taken up too much of your time. Could you do me a quick favor? And if anybody wants to get in touch with you and would like to help out in any way, I'd love to help out in any way, shape, or form. And if anybody would like to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, just email me. Personal email, ryan@votewilcox.com. I should probably get a different one for the School Safety Policy Center or something, but that's the
that would be a good idea. That would be a good idea.
But that's it right there. Just send me an email. I'm happy to chat with anyone. We are, like I said, we're helping states across the country to write these policies. You know what we do. It's about time. It's about cutting it off. There's we get the pushback. There's 500 million weapons in the United States. There's 350 million people. You're not going to take the weapons, let alone the constitutional issues, with that out of Americans' hands. The real answer is that we prevent those who shouldn't have them from having them.
Correct.
And we as soon as possible with deadly force.
Right.
And so we've required armed security in every school. We've required we prefer law enforcement to be the armed security, but we've given several options. And frankly, every state, Tennessee, Texas, Florida, of course, that have gone through these things recently, Georgia, they've gone the same direction. They've come to the same conclusions. So there's a lot.
Good. We have an answer. That's awesome.
Yep.
And the operating with deadly force as soon as possible is all I'm telling you is the key indicator on getting rid of people that, because it glorifies them and, they get taken care of the rest of their life in jail. But if they don't make it to jail, then, my opinion only, if any criminals were to get killed immediately, there'd be less criminals. So, I know you can't say that more. Can you agree with me? I appreciate that. Listen, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your service too. Helping out with legislating and doing this. I can't thank you enough. If anybody wants to get in touch with Ryan, please do. This is a great cause and near and dear to my heart. We're going to let everybody else go. Thanks a lot for coming, and I appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.